There is a region in northern Italy that has been making wine since before Julius Caesar was born. A region where the Romans considered the wine so good that the Emperor Augustus preferred it over wines from Falerno, which was, at the time, the most prestigious wine in the known world. And yet today, many people have never heard of it. It's called Trentino. And if you have heard of it, you might associate it with cheap Pinot Grigio sold in supermarkets, which is frankly a tremendous injustice, because Trentino is also home to one of Italy's most beloved sparkling wines and one of its rarest indigenous red grapes. Trentino is the southern half of the administrative region called Trentino Alto Adige, and if you watched the Alto Adige series, you already know the northern half. Trentino and Alto Adige are neighbors. They share a valley, a history, and they are frequently grouped together as one region, but they are different places with different identities, languages, and wine cultures. Alto Adige leans Germanic. 70% of its population speaks German as a first language, and the wine culture was shaped by centuries of Austrian rule. Trentino, by contrast, is Italian, fully, proudly Italian. The capital, Trento, is a Roman city. Its name comes directly from its ancient Latin form, Tridentum. This is where the Council of Trent was held in the 16th century, one of the most significant gatherings in the history of the Catholic Church. And as we will see, the Council of Trent also had some surprisingly important consequences for wine. But before we get to councils, emperors, and centuries of history, we need to understand a very important question. Why does wine grow so well here? Because almost everything that makes Trentino special begins with the landscape. So let's take a break from the history and talk about what makes Trentino's wine so distinctive from a physical standpoint. The terrain here is dominated by the same Y-shaped valley system as Alto Adige to the north, the main Adige Valley running north-south, with the Avisio tributary running northeast toward Valle di Cembra, and the Sarca Valley running southwest toward Lake Garda. About 70% of the land sits above 1,000 meters. The Dolomites, considered by many the most beautiful mountains in the world, form the backdrop to the east. The geology is a mosaic. Each subzone tells its own geological story, and each one produces wine with a distinct character. In the north, in the Campo Rotaliano, Teroldego country, the soils are alluvial, sandy, gravelly, rich in minerals transported from the Alps by the rivers over millennia. Perfect for the bold, dark style of Teroldego. Moving east into the Valle di Cembra, the geology shifts to porphyry and granite, volcanic and metamorphic rocks from an ancient geological episode. The hillsides here are steep. The vines struggle, and that struggle produces something remarkable in Müller-Thurgau and other whites. Mineral intensity, precise acidity, a tension that flatter, more fertile soils can never achieve. Valle di Cembra has glacial origins. The slopes were shaped by the erosive actions of retreating glaciers. You can see the evidence in the smooth, rocky surfaces lined with striations. In this valley, 800 hours of manual labor are required per year, per hectare. To put that in perspective, on a plain, 1 hectare requires about 150 hours of work per year. The people working the Valle di Cembra are doing more than 5 times the labor per hectare. This is not agriculture. This is devotion. In the south, near the Valle di Laghi to the west of Trento, the warm Ora del Garda dominates. The daily wind from Lake Garda pushes warm Mediterranean air northward, moderating the alpine harshness. It is this wind that makes the Valle dei Laghi suitable for Nosiola, Trentino's only indigenous white grape, and for the extraordinary dessert wine made from it. The climate is continental with alpine characteristics, hot summers, cold winters, and dramatic swings between daytime heat and nighttime coolness. The Ora del Garda moderates temperatures in summer, allowing grapes to withstand what would otherwise be punishing heat. Temperatures in summer can reach 35 degrees Celsius in Trentino, but this wind from the lake keeps the grapes alive and the acids intact. There is also another noteworthy altitude effect worth understanding. For every 100 meters of elevation gained, the temperature drops approximately 1 degree Celsius. This means that a vineyard at 600 meters is, on average, about 4 degrees cooler than one at 200 meters in the same valley. In a region already defined by the tension between alpine cold and Mediterranean warmth, this gradient creates an almost infinite range of microclimatic expressions across a relatively small geographic area. All of this helps explain why great wine can be made here, but it doesn't explain how long people have been doing it, because the story of Trentino wine doesn't begin with Italy. It doesn't even begin with Rome. The first evidence of viticulture in Trentino goes back to the Bronze Age, between 1800 and 1600 BC, the same period as the earliest evidence in neighboring Alto Adige. But it was the Etruscans who first gave wine in this region genuine cultural significance. From around 500 to 400 BC, the Etruscans in this region began shifting from imported wine, amphora of wine from Crete, Campania, and the Aegean Sea have been found in archaeological sites here, to locally produced wine from native varieties. Wine was used in ceremonies, sacred rituals, and in the social fabric of their civilization. Then the Romans arrived, and things accelerated considerably. The Romans classified their wines rigorously. The statesman Pliny the Elder organized them into categories of prestige. In his great work Naturalis Historia, he identified the Retico, wine from the Val d'Adige, the valley of the Adige River in what is now Trentino, as among the finest in all of Italy. It was considered inferior only to the wines of Falerno, which were the most prized wines in the Roman world. Even more importantly, the Emperor Augustus himself preferred Retica wine over Puccino, the wine that his wife Livia famously promoted as the secret to her longevity. When the Emperor chooses your wine over the competition, that is not a small endorsement. Trentino wine had imperial approval. The Romans also introduced to the world something that Trentino had already been practicing for centuries: conserving wine in wooden containers rather than clay jars. Trentino introduced the Romans to the wooden vessel. This region was ahead of the dominant civilization of the ancient world in one of the most fundamental techniques of winemaking. There is also evidence of Roman presses found at Calavino and around Rovereto, which tells us that structured, intentional winemaking, not just grape cultivation, was happening here during the Roman era. This was not wild grapes being foraged. This was agriculture. By the time the Roman Empire collapsed, wine was deeply rooted in the valley. The question was whether that tradition would survive the centuries that followed. Fortunately for Trentino, there were people willing to preserve it. After the fall of Rome, the story of Trentino wine follows the same arc as most of European viticulture. The monasteries stepped in. In the 8th century, monks ordered the systematic study of viticulture, and many grape varietals that we still know today owe their survival and development to monastic cultivation. Teroldego, the flagship red grape of Trentino, was mentioned in ancient manuscripts alongside the mulberry tree. This is because migrating populations who brought the grape to this region also planted mulberry trees, which were used for centuries as living support stakes for the vines. The two plants arrived together, traveled together, and were tended together. The mulberry gave structure to the vine gave wine to the people. By 1300, Teroldego's existence was officially recorded in the Piana Rotaliana, the alluvial plain at the northern end of Trentino where the Adige and Noce rivers meet. This is the grape's natural home, and it has essentially never left. The Campo Rotaliano is a 430-hectare plain of gravelly, sandy, limestone-rich soils, ideal for Teroldego. It is often described as the most beautiful vineyard in Europe, with the Alps rising dramatically on all sides. By the 14th century, tastes across Europe were changing. Wealthy consumers increasingly prized aromatic and sweet wines imported through Venetian trade routes from the eastern Mediterranean. Wines made from varieties such as Malvasia, Moscato, and Greco. Trentino suddenly found itself competing with some of the most fashionable wines in the known world. The response was interesting. Rather than imitate those wines, many growers began focusing on fewer varieties capable of producing deeper color, higher alcohol, and greater structure. Grapes such as Lagrein and Marzemino gained importance, while lighter varieties gradually lost ground. In many ways, this was the beginning of Trentino's search for its own identity. While many European wine regions were increasingly producing for export markets, much of Trentino remained focused on local consumption. The region had relatively little vineyard surface area and lacked the commercial advantages enjoyed by larger wine-producing centers. As a result, Trentino developed differently, less famous internationally, but often more closely tied to local traditions. And then, in 1545, Teroldego achieved something that very few wines in history can claim. It was served at the Council of Trent. This was Trentino wine's moment of international fame. By the 16th century, Trentino wine had reached the highest levels of European society. It was being served to cardinals, bishops, and diplomats from across the continent. But prestige alone doesn't guarantee prosperity, and the challenges facing Trentino were only beginning. For much of the medieval and early modern period, wine in Trentino played second fiddle to another agricultural product: silk. The base of agricultural income in Trentino was silk production, not wine. The mulberry trees that supported the vines were also the food source for silkworms. The two industries were literally intertwined. Losing silk was devastating, but it wasn't the only problem. A series of political and economic shocks would make things even worse. In 1866, Veneto detached from Austria and became part of Italy, causing a crash in the silk market. A commercial treaty signed between 1892 and 1904 introduced a clause that lowered duties on Italian wines imported into the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Which sounds like it should be good news, but the result was that the reduced prices made cultivation economically unviable for many producers. Trento and Rovereto, the two main cities of the region meanwhile, were rivals, blocking each other's wines and obstructing each other's commerce. Regional rivalry in 16th and 17th century Italy was not a metaphor. It had real practical consequences for trade. Trade in Trentino was difficult enough when people disagreed about economics. It became even more complicated when they started worrying about the supernatural. Merchants in the region were known to be afraid of witches haunting the trade routes of Trentino, so much so that priests had to bless the roads and banish the witches to the mountains before merchants would feel safe traveling them. The wine trade required supernatural protection as well as commercial acumen. By the end of the 19th century, Trentino's wine industry had endured centuries of upheaval. Economic collapse, emigration, declining confidence in the future. It would have been easy to assume that this region's best days were behind it. Instead, they were about to begin, because one man saw an opportunity where everyone else saw risk. Chardonnay arrived in Trentino via the Austrian administration through the Istituto Agrario around the end of the 19th century. But here is a detail that tells you something about the economic realities of the time. Even though the grape's potential was recognized, producers didn't want to invest in it. Chardonnay produced low yields, and in a region where farmers were already struggling economically, low-yield varieties were not attractive. It took one man to change that perception. His name was Giulio Ferrari, and in 1902, he founded a sparkling wine house in the city of Trento that would eventually become Italy's most awarded, traditional method sparkling wine producer. Ferrari had studied winemaking in France, specifically in Champagne, and returned to Trentino convinced of one thing: the terroir of his home region was ideal for producing great sparkling wine. The altitude, the acidity, the diurnal temperature swings, the Chardonnay he had tasted and believed in when others didn't, all of it pointed toward bubbles. And he was right. The high elevation of Trentino's vineyards is the key to producing sparkling wine that can genuinely rival champagne in complexity and longevity. High altitude preserves acidity in the grapes, the backbone of any great sparkling wine. The Dolomites provide a natural refrigerator, and the Hora del Garda ensures that ripeness is achieved alongside freshness. Ferrari had no children, and in 1952, he chose his friend Bruno Lunelli as successor. The Lunelli family, now in its third generation, has built Ferrari into the benchmark of Italian traditional method sparkling wine. Today, over 55 producers in Trentino make Trento DOC, the denomination formally established in 1993, and every bottle must age for a minimum of 15 months on the lees. Vintage and Riserva expressions require 24 and 36 months respectively. The production process looks, to a champagne aficionado, almost identical: riddling equipment, dark cellars, bottle-stacked lathes, disgorgement lines. The key difference is terroir, and that terroir at altitude in the Dolomites produces sparkling wines with a mountain character that is entirely their own. It is worth noting that the recognition of Trento DOC's quality was not accidental. It was the result of a man, Giulio Ferrari, who trusted a grape that nobody else wanted to invest in a method that nobody else in Italy was pursuing with serious intent, in a region that most people associated with bulk wine. Sometimes, a single person's conviction changes the trajectory of an entire wine culture. And that conviction did more than just create a successful winery. It showed what Trentino could become. By the end of the 20th century, Trentino had already survived the fall of Rome, medieval upheaval, economic collapse, and centuries of difficult mountain farming. And somehow, it had transformed itself into one of the more ambitious wine regions in Italy. But the hardest part of the story was still coming.